Day 14, Ottawa. I woke up much later than I expected. The weather was overcast, but still quite warm, and thankfully much less humid than Toronto. Over the past couple of days, I had settled in very late in the evening and arose quite early in the morning. While my base in Etobicoke was ideal for exploring Toronto, my base in Ottawa was less than ideal as the amenities were rather restricted. After my morning cleansing ritual, I located a Tim Hortons close by where I had breakfast and planned out my day. After looking back at the pictures I had of myself and my friend Lance at the German Cultural Center, I knew I had to start exercising again. Back in Victoria, I exercised 2 hours a day, 5 days a week at home. On the road, I had no exercise at all, aside from walking. I located a public recreational centre with a gym facility where I decided I would visit every morning, every day throughout my stay in Ottawa. While I was excited to see downtown Ottawa, I needed to stay in shape. I took the Queensway Route heading over east to the Bob MacQuarrie Recreation Complex. Since the weather wasn't all that pleasant, I didn't mind spending some extra time in the gym. The facility itself was a little dated, and due to the COVID-19 pandemic, the showers were unavailable, unless I was using the swimming pool. It felt great to exercise again, and I decided that before heading into downtown, I would explore one of the many local parks. While Toronto had an endless urban setting in all directions, Ottawa was a much better mix with plenty of green space and parks in the city. I located Britannia Park and again took the Queensway Route heading west this time, bypassing downtown Ottawa. I also discovered that since Ottawa is a much smaller city in terms of area, it was rather quick to get around. The downside, though, was that many of the roads were in very poor condition. Toronto roads, for the most part, were in good shape, but it seemed like the road crews in Ottawa must have been on strike as I was dodging potholes throughout my drive. I arrived in Britannia Park after a quick drive, and I needed to get into some cardio for my morning. I decided to jog along part of the park that included Trans-Canada Trail. I encircled a small body of water called Mud Lake and then ran down to another adjacent park named Andrew Haydon Park. After taking a quick breather, I decided to walk back to my car and head into downtown Ottawa. The visit to the gym and the run in the park made me quite hungry, so I decided to have a late lunch. There was no shortage of the delicious sushi restaurants in Victoria, so I expected much better in Ottawa. Being disappointed in yesterday's sushi dinner, I thought I would try another late sushi lunch. I wasn't quite sure where to go, but I did want to head into downtown Ottawa to finally check everything out. There was plenty of road construction along the way, heading through the now familiar Queensway Route. I arrived downtown and there was a small splendor waiting for me. I parked by the CF Rideau Centre, the main shopping mall in downtown Ottawa. At first I was a little disappointed in the area. It looked dirty and grungy, not anywhere near as bad as what I would find in Winnipeg, but considering that this was the capital, I was a little disappointed. I walked around until I found City Hall not too far away. It wasn't anything spectacular, just a modern building that didn't even look as nice as the legislative building in Victoria. As I walked around further, I was surprised by how there were so many statues of some of the most instrumental people in Canadian history. It also made me feel happy that there were so many references to how Canada is Aboriginal land and Ottawa resides on territory belonging to Algonquin and Anishinabe people. Venturing back north of City Hall, I found myself in a trendy area called Byward Market. I saw a cathedral in the distance and I thought it would be cool for me to follow where it led me. The cathedral itself was called Notre Dame Basilica. With its spires, it's easily seen from a distance. After walking through Byward Market, I headed west through Major Hills Park. From this point forward, everything around Ottawa was about cleanliness and proper presentation. As I was walking through the park, I found a sold teddy bear on the ground. I thought it was odd that someone would leave this here. It didn't appear as if somebody accidentally dropped it. So I picked it up and I took it with me. I wasn't quite sure what I would do with it, just kept it with me for the time being. I found a bronze guide showing the major streets in Ottawa, along with the Parliament building, so I thought I'd follow this guide and it would lead me to new experiences. In the park, I found another monument honoring the Aboriginal war veterans who gave their lives to Canada and her allies. From there, I was able to find the tomb of the unknown soldier. Heavily guarded by military police, it was a solemn reminder that freedom isn't free, and many have sacrificed for the freedom that we take for granted today. 2 soldiers in uniform guarded the tomb alongside military police. I've always wanted to join the military to have the honor of wearing a uniform and living for a greater cause than myself, such as the country that I love. Perhaps in the future? Just outside of the tomb of the unknown soldier were several monuments of those who played a role in Canada's 5 periods of war. This was an area called the Valiants Memorial. From the French regime to the American Revolution, the War of 1812, the First World War, and Second World War, we have seen ordinary people rise up to become heroes. Reading the names of these heroes gave me realization as to how many parks, streets, neighborhoods, and even cities are named after them. Across Wellington Street, just north of the Tomb of the Unknown Soldiers, was one of the most photographed areas of the Rideau Canal. The main locks just east of the Parliament building. By now, I was so engrossed with the scenery of Ottawa, I forgot that I came to downtown for some sushi. And I also forgot just how hot it was starting to become. I walked through Major's Hill Park again, watching people enjoy themselves in the now very hot weather. Ottawa wasn't nearly as humid as Toronto, but this was still a heat wave. While I would normally walk around without a shirt in this time of weather, I decided not to, as to have some respect in Canada's capital city. I arrived at the National Art Gallery of Canada to be greeted by a giant spider. Unfortunately, due to COVID, the National Art Gallery of Canada was not open. Again, in front of the Notre Dame Basilica, I decided to wander backwards towards the Parliament building. Again, more interesting monuments with historical plaques greeted me throughout each walk, each depicting ordinary people who rose to overcome challenges that helped shape Canada into what it is today. From equality for women to the fine arts, there were many monuments at practically every corner. I found myself on Sparks Street, a pedestrian-only area just south of the Parliament building. By now, I was extremely hungry, and I picked up some sushi at a random sushi vendor. This area, similar to what Granville Street used to be in Vancouver, was another trendy area in Ottawa where one can simply enjoy themselves basking in the surroundings. I was still taking in all the sights around me, being in the capital of Canada for the first time. The sense of pride in Canada and being a Canadian was such an overpowering feeling. I barely realized that the sushi I ordered was overpriced rice, seaweed, and pollock flakes. After my brief rest, I decided it was time to visit the Parliament building. One of the things I noticed about Ottawa was its cleanliness. Although it was contradictory to the location I parked my beast earlier, the main areas surrounding downtown Ottawa were very clean. As I headed over to the Parliament building, I also noticed how the area had a strong police presence, as it naturally should. I walked towards the center of the Parliament building with the centennial flame in the center of the central walkway. In the midst of this pandemic, there were still small crowds present. There was no internal activity at the moment, as the entire area was under construction. Surprisingly, the area I started off from by the CF Rideau Centre was actually busier than the Parliament grounds. As I walked closer to the centennial flames to take pictures, a deep sadness overcame me. As with recent events, the discovery of mass graves of children throughout residential schools in Canada had the public very upset with the government's handling of the issue. While I was proud of being a Canadian moments ago, coming to realize that we, as all other countries around the globe, have committed atrocities that we must be ashamed of. The centennial flame was alit, and behind it were symbols of children whose spirits have not been at peace due to the injustice. Toys, shoes, teddy bears, and more were set around the centennial flame. And behind it, to remind us that the children are the future and they must be protected. All children. I came to realize the purpose of the teddy bear I picked up earlier. I dropped it off at the front of the centennial flame and walked away, trying not to cry. I walked counterclockwise, starting at the east end of the Parliament building, along a footpath that runs a perimeter around the Parliament grounds. Much of the area had restricted access due to the construction, but I explored what was left accessible. Again, many monuments of great Canadian achievements and great Canadians were abound. While the feeling of sadness from the sights at the centennial flame did not wash away, some happiness did return as I was walking through the Parliament grounds. Seeing tourists from other areas take pictures and enjoy the sights made me feel proud. While I am sure that most tourists have no idea the importance of those depicted in the monuments had, it was great to see people enjoying themselves. As I continued further, I looked across to Rideau Canal towards the Notre Dame Basilica and the National Art Gallery where I was earlier. Downtown Ottawa was truly a wonderful place to be. The Major Hills Park was starting to fill up with people enjoying themselves in the beautiful but brutally hot weather. The architecture of the Parliament building would be considered by most architects Gothic Revival, although not very many people know that it had been destroyed and damaged more than once since its inception. Although the maintenance does cost a significant sum, seeing it in person, I came to appreciate its details. The copper roof, now patinaed in green, easily stood out with the multiple spires and decorative finials on the lower sections. I was enjoying the beauty of the Parliament building when I looked over at the Ottawa River and caught a glimpse of the aquabus. Strange how a tour bus was amphibious and offers tours of the water, from the water. I did not consider taking this tour as I thought it would be really cool, but given that I don't know how to swim, I have a phobia of watery environments. I continued to follow the footpath that led around the north side of the building, close to the water. Perched atop the scenic riverbank overlooking the Ottawa River and into Gatineau, Quebec, the Parliament grounds offers beautiful scenery, much like most of Ottawa that I've seen so far. Around the north side was a lot of construction, and most of the work had been completed, so civilians were free to explore the area. By now, it was quite busy with all the tourists. I could only have imagined how busy it would have been were it not for COVID. Ottawa gave me quite a different feel from Toronto, naturally. It would not be fair to compare the two as they're vastly different. Ottawa had a higher sense of class, especially being the capital of Canada and home to the federal government. While my first day here was nothing spectacular, my second day so far was quite exciting. I walked around the west end of the Parliament grounds, again past many tourists and some heavily armed police. The House of Commons wasn't decorated as well as the other buildings, but it was still an impressive structure nonetheless. After reaching the end of the West Block, I decided to randomly venture further down the road and see what I would encounter. I found an interesting statue of an Aboriginal hunter and a deer along my walk. It was quite easy to miss at first as it was in a shaded area of a building's green space, but it actually came together quite well. It was cool to see such statues in and around Ottawa's downtown area. The layout was done very well with the sights of the Aboriginal hunter reaching for an arrow and the deer in the background with precise symmetry. There was no shortage of memorials for war veterans in Ottawa, as naturally the capital of Canada should showcase that the peace we enjoy came at a tremendous cost. Walking along, it would be normal to see something every few minutes or even every few meters in some cases. I came across a bronze park bench with a young boy and a girl sharing an apple. I thought it was rather cute, so I did have to take a picture of it. Traveling further westward, I came across a bridge that would lead me into Gatineau. I decided to stay on the Ottawa side of things, but seeing how I was getting extremely hot by now, I thought it would be better for me to walk closer to the water. I headed down some stairs where there was a footpath along the Ottawa River. In a small tunnel, there were all sorts of cool drawings, mainly Aboriginal based, and it was great to see no one had vandalized them. In other parts of the country, these would have been destroyed or stolen long ago. Walking by the Ottawa River was peaceful, and the scent of the water and the breeze coming off of it was relaxing. While I was no longer at the Parliament grounds, I decided it would be fine just to take my shirt off by now. There were a number of people enjoying themselves along the footpath, from tourists to locals, doing everything from running to relaxing. Looking over into Gatineau, it seemed to be boring compared to everything that I've seen in Ottawa so far. That may have been a poor presumption, but then again, Ottawa was so much more than I thought it would be. I retraced my steps and headed back towards CF Rideau Centre. Along the way, I heard the sound of bagpipes around the tomb of the unknown soldier. I then realized that this was the changing of the guard. I quickly ran over and just happened to catch the end of the ceremony. The soldiers were escorted by a military police officer who was massive in size. He made me feel small just by looking at him. Even though I missed most of it, I enjoyed being able to witness the changing of the guard. I walked through Major's Hill Park again, this time absolutely packed with people. I continued north past the National Art Gallery of Canada onto Sussex Drive, which was one of the most well-known streets in Canada. I walked past the Macdonald-Cartier Bridge and even considered wandering into Quebec. But I knew that in the future I would already be visiting Montreal, Quebec City, and more, so my French experience would have to wait. I came across more monuments on Green Island, a small parcel of land overlooking Ottawa River. As I was now exiting downtown Ottawa, there was some relative peace and quiet compared to how busy it was around the Parliament grounds and Major's Hill Park just moments ago. I walked past the International Peace Garden and past Rideau Falls Park, where it seemed as though someone was having a lavish dinner event. Uninvited and most definitely underdressed, I walked on past. It would be unusual to have someone shirtless with tattoos wearing a red cowboy hat show up unannounced at a wedding. It would be quite amusing for some, though. I walked past 24 Sussex Drive, the official residence of the Prime Minister of Canada. It was a fortress with high fences, high gates, and security cameras on a deeply forested area. I knew I was being watched, although I was not a security threat. I was interested in seeing how the family of the leader of our country actually lives. Eventually, I reached a roundabout where there was a statue of our monarch, Queen Elizabeth II. I have always had a deep admiration for our monarch, although the role was more ceremonial at present day than it would have been half a century ago. Just at the corner of the roundabout was the Rideau Hall grounds. I did consider walking into the grounds to see what lies beyond the gates, but I decided to backtrack once again towards the Parliament building. I knew there was a McDonald's in the area, and since they were serving at $1 for iced coffee, I thought I would purchase 3 of them, just heading into a different location to explore. Along the way, I found a monument of one of the most inspirational Canadian heroes the world has known, Terry Fox. I first seen a monument of Terry Fox back in Thunder Bay about a week ago. It was great that Ottawa shared a space for him right across the Parliament building. Amongst the numerous war heroes that have shaped Canada into what it is present day, here was another Canadian hero who brought light to the war against cancer. An average Canadian who at the age of 22 became immortalized forever by the Terry Fox run. By now, the heat had mainly dissipated and a different crowd was coming into the downtown core of Ottawa. I decided I would pass through Byward Market and then back to my beast. Byward Market looked like a hip and happening place. Many of the establishments ranged from upscale restaurants to hole-in-the-wall diners. From overpriced souvenir shops selling rubbish to handcrafted artisan goods sold by independent vendors. I knew that I would come back here again. It seemed to be very busy as the night was falling in. It had been a very, very long day, and I thought I would retire earlier than normal. Although, given that I had also very little to eat, worked out at the gym in the morning, and walked around long distances in the heat, I would snap up a few pictures and head back to my resting spot. I found a lovely spot similar to Toronto, and Ottawa had its own sign. It was far too busy to take a picture of it without others in the picture, but I snapped up a photo anyways. I slowly walked back to my beast, feeling tired and my back was a little sore, but happy with today's exploration. I drove back to the Ottawa train yards, the location where I would be spending my nights while in Ottawa, and prepared myself for a longer than normal resting period. Many thoughts were running through me. How not too long ago I decided to leave Victoria on a cross-country road trip. How this pandemic had created chaos in the modern world, yet I was able to find adventure at every corner. I was disappointed with the sushi I had today, like I was the day earlier. But negative thoughts like that dissipated quickly. Ottawa was truly a gem of a city, and our capital is much more beautiful in person than I expected it to be. I had many wonderful experiences today, and I would be falling asleep thinking of them. Tomorrow would begin another new adventure. Subscribe to the Travel Experience de Voyage channel. Tap the bell and join the conversation on the comment section below.